Radio OKiTALK, Radio OKiTALK, von Mensch zu Mensch.
It is the Wizard of Oz, edition 10 with Bryan Lahr. Today, snake symbolism. Welcome, Bryan.
Hey, how are you? It's a crazy world out there right now, isn't it? Yeah.
It certainly is.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about the Oral Boris today, which is one of my favorite ancient symbols and is still used in all forms of occultism today. And that symbol is a snake in a circle consuming its tail. And the other thing we'll talk about today is dragon energy and the nature of dragon energy and its symbology in the East and the West, which is incredibly different, and how to use that. So I'm super excited. It's going to be a fun show. So how are things in your part of the world, man? Are you what's it like in Vienna right now?
Well, I would say it's quiet in a sense. People have been asked to stay inside. Quite a few are actually heeding that call. Again, not now going into to what degree or why that may be useful, but overall I would say it's calm. And yeah, actually from my point of view, pretty relaxed by now.
Do you actually know anybody that's sick? Or have heard of anybody in your vicinity that's ill?
Well, no, not in terms of particularities, but also I haven't heard of anyone I know that's like heavily sick of anything, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know some people out in California that supposedly got it, but to be honest with you, I think she probably just has a cold. And it's, here in Miami, it's, they locked, the state's not really locked down, but people are pretty much business is shot. I usually am part of the big Ultrafest music festival every year that happens right around the equinox. And first time in 21 years, they canceled it outright. It's kind of trippy. It's like just, I'm not really big into sports, but there's a huge chunk of people that are super involved in like the NBA, National Basketball Association. They stopped the season. Every year there's a huge thing that tons of people get involved in called March Madness, and it's all the college teams playing for a national title, and that usually goes on for like a whole 6-8 weeks. It's really huge, and tons of people that canceled. It's just really trippy to watch, like everything just sort of shut down. All of the essential stuff is still all good. That's kind of what I was flipping out about the other day. I went into 3 grocery stores just trying to get some essentials. And man, the first store I walked in, there's like a line set up that wraps around the inside of the store like 3 times. I mean, that must have been an hours-long wait in line, and just the goo of walking into this energy in there where people are panicked, and like it's, I'm kind of used to dealing with that energy. The collective gestalt of crowds of people have such a tangible energetic effect, and I live in Miami. It's like Hurricane Alley, so you'll see a hurricane coming across from Africa. It develops, the news starts on it, makes it some like really intense event. Everybody get ready, get your water, and everybody floods to the stores and like gets their supplies. And It's kind of intense for about a week before it gets there because they just keep escalating the panic. And then it hits, and then you're dealing with the aftermath, but that isn't that same kind of really fear-induced juice. But this one, it's like, you can't see a hurricane coming across. It's just some like invisible pathogen that anyone could give you. And I mean, they're just making it into this like panic thing, and there's so much fear about it. And everybody, a lot of people have been giving President Trump a bunch of crap for saying stay calm, but getting panicked is not the way to roll. And just doing something, it's like, no, that's the time you should stay panicked and or stay calm and be methodical about attacking it. That energy also makes sure that doesn't show up for you. When you're spewing out fear and you're spewing out panic and you're in your mind creating this scenario where you're sick and like everybody around you sick, that's when that manifests. It's like sticking your hand up in a crowd and saying over here. So while it is certainly not something to take lightly, and I don't imply that in any way, shape, or form. At the same time, the storm's coming, so get your supplies, stay calm, do what you can do, keep yourself healthy, keep your immune system up. Our bodies are miraculous machines that we've let get weak. And, if you keep your body like working like the machine is supposed to, it has systems in place to deal with all of that. There have been flu epidemics rolled through here pretty much every year for the past 5 or 6 years. Hasn't touched me once. And knock on wood, I don't say that to be cocky in any way, shape, or form. I just took precautions, and I think everybody would be really well advised to send some energy out instead of projecting into the worst case scenario. Project your energy into the best case scenario and it blowing over without touching you. And anyway, I've just sort of been marveling at the collective energy that's happening right now. The other thing that's really different about that from like when a hurricane's coming, it's localized. You've got the islands in the Caribbean, and you've got Florida and the East Coast there, but once they've got a bead on where the hurricane's actually going, that's kind of a localized issue. It's I mean, certainly the whole country pays attention and pitches in the aftermath, but that's not really affecting the whole country. So, that localized fear juice is crazy enough, but this is the first one where I've ever experienced a global version of that, where so many people all over the world are all focusing on one thing, and it's kind of trippy. It's a new experience for me. How about you? How are you tasting it? How's it working out for you?
Well, all I can say also, because you've been using that kind of phrasing right now, just to let everyone know, this is what Q has always talked about, the idea of the storm, and the storm is coming, and the storm is here, and so on and so forth, just as a interesting snippet to research. Then, of course, what I marvel at, in a sense, is the very varied reactions of each and every one, depending what they focus on, whether they feel quite secure and are more on the calm side or interested maybe in helping others, whether they panic, whether they start calculating or reading the new official numbers every day. And even here, we can just mention on the side that even the tests are not very accurate, whatever they may actually be testing. So there's many like issues in between, then there's media hype, and who knows, all ideas from political to economic reset may be possible, or in any case, let's say, are happening right now, obviously. However, they may have been planned or not, or everyone, again, if interested, may research these ideas for themselves. But what remains for me, and what is the thing I like to bring it back to, no matter what one's own personal belief system is, always to be willing that if one detects fear in oneself, then to always investigate where that fear is coming from, and realize from a spiritual perspective that all negative beliefs, and I always love to repeat this, always must fundamentally be untrue and false, because reality is made of unconditional love. Therefore, any negative belief is something that is simply not resonant with oneself. And if one then is not paralyzed by fear, but willing to investigate, then whatever your belief system is and whatever you eventually decide upon, and that is left entirely up to you and you, the listener. The good thing is, if you investigate your fear, you will always realize there is a more positive view to see any situation and to respond to any situation. And that's the real choice in each and every moment, whether we choose to be paralyzed by fear or whether we are willing to investigate negative belief systems and redefine it into something positive.
Exactly.
That's all it ever has been, and maybe that's what's more relevant than ever right now. And yeah, the rabbit hole goes deep. What can I say? There's many different layers, many different perspectives, but it's just great if you allow yourself the peace, the calm, and in a sense, the courage to investigate up to a point, each and every one for themselves, until you feel secure and happy and positive about your situation and about your response.
And you know, I would slightly disagree with something you said, in that, you know, negative belief exists in whoever holds that belief, you know, and if they pour enough juice and energy on that they can actually manifest that, you know.
Of
that's
course.
a reality, and vice versa. And you know, always remember the duality of things. You know, for everything there's an opposite, you know, and if you're in fear space, there's an opposite space to that you can choose for yourself. It's not a function of outside stimulus giving that to you one way or the other. That's your choice to go get and be in that vibration, as opposed to the fear vibration. And I think that would be one of the top tools for battling this storm.
Yeah, well, even if one even wants to battle, or then just in a sense be able to smile about it, in a sense, or to recognize what you just said, that, as Bashar always says, circumstances don't matter, only your state of being matters. And this is even referenced, as I understand, in medical and scientific terms, called the placebo or also the nocebo effect. So the idea that, again, your own emotional state, your own lookout, can have very, very positive effects or also very, very negative effects. And if one goes down that line of thinking further, it's again this very, let's say, spiritual perspective of you simply creating your own reality, depending not on what happens, but depending on how you respond to it and from what state of being you choose to act, and what you choose to believe about yourself. So,
you know, when I was in the store the other day, I was just marveling at the amount of energy that was being put forth, and pretty much all of that energy was gooky fear-based energy. But I was fantasizing about, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could take every person here that's like spewing out this intensity and flip the switch, instead of believing that something bad is coming and it's going to get me. If every single person just in that one store focused on making that virus go away altogether, that would actually happen. You know, that would be a really amazing group magical effect. I would love to be part of something like that. That would be super cool. I've been doing that on my own already.
Well,
anyway.
All I can tell you is that for some individuals, that already is a reality. You know, there are lines of thinking that very much go into the direction of, let's just say, having a very different interpretation of what this idea of a so-called virus actually is. And who knows, if nothing else, we may learn from this that an overly centralized economy in whatever way is never very smart, that local supply is a good idea, that knowing about your own health and knowing what to eat and all of these ideas are also great. So there's many amazing things. And just one more a symbolic reference. Here it's written in German, but I'm briefly translating. So here it says, interestingly enough, Corona Stephana, the holy Corona, or also called Stephana, about 160 year of Christ in Egypt or Syria, is an early Christian martyr. She's the patron of money, butchers, and treasure seekers.
There you go.
Yeah. So very, very interesting. And also for me that it says Corona Stephana because the Stephen's crown is the Holy Crown of Hungary, which I haven't completely decoded yet, but also seems to be a very, very important artifact. And as I'm already reading, again here from Wikipedia, so not the very best source, but good enough for basics. And also very fitting, of course, as we say, we want to talk about the Ouroboros. So the Ouroboros, says here, is an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail. Originating in ancient Egyptian iconography, the Ouroboros entered Western tradition via Greek magical tradition and was adopted as a symbol in Gnosticism and Hermeticism, and most notably in alchemy.
Yeah, Ouroboros is a Greek word for tail devourer. Yeah,
exactly.
go ahead.
So here it says from ancient Greek, which I can't read, so it's ora, tail, bora, food, from a certain verb, which means I eat. The Ouroboros, and here is where we get into the synchronistic correlation to what's happening right now, is often interpreted as a symbol for eternal cyclic renewal or a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The skin sloughing process of snakes symbolizes the transmigration of souls. The snake biting its own tail is a fertility symbol. The tail of the snake is a phallic symbol. The mouth is a yonic or womb-like symbol. So here we go. Transformation, full speed. Also episode number 10, Wheel of Fortune, also fits.
Yeah, there you go. So, the Greeks get credited with the attachment to Ouroboros and its use in Western Western magic, but that's a symbol that goes back really, really far, way back to in Egypt. I think it's 16 or 1700 years back into Egypt, and it was a symbol of the sun and represented the travels of the sun, and that the Egyptians, man, they started everything. The swastika, it's all these symbols that people are attached to now that they all have their birth seemingly way back there. And that's another topic for another show. But the Phoenicians adopted it, the Gnostics adopted it, and then the Greeks, the Greeks really latched onto it, and it is such. It really is an amazing symbol, and that as above, so below applies to this in so many ways, because the symbology of that just is infinite. It is reborn, but and in the simplest reduction of that, life in the physical, in the materialized universe, life consumes life. It eats energy to sustain itself across the board. So in one way, that's a symbol of that too, of consuming its own thing and consuming the past and moving into the future, and using the past as fuel to drive your path, coming up. And also the serpent has been used as a symbol of life force in so many different cultures around the world, and it's been the Judeo-Christian philosophy kind of like demonized the snake, but in all other cultures, it's a sacred symbol of vitality and life force, and procreation. So it's curious. I began my own personal research into the Ouroboros about 30 years ago, and at different times, you go for a period of time and learn a bunch of new stuff and come back to some of your old favorite haunts, and the Ouroboros has been like that for me on numerous occasions, where I bring a new set of eyes to it and get to see it in a whole nother level of understanding than I did before. But what's really curious is that I'm really big about being in nature when I'm trying to figure something out. And I love taking long walks in the woods and down by the beach, and during those times, I often, when I'm talking about times when you're really focused on a question or some area of learning that you're trying to understand, I will get the craziest, weirdest natural omens. Like more than once, I've been standing in this particular place in the woods I love, and a feather floats down, and I catch it, and it was a particular bird feather, a particular color, and that's happened more than once. And along that walk just recently, I found a dead baby garter snake that had curled itself into an Ouroboros. It had its tail in its mouth. It was pretty much in a perfect circle, and it was already sort of petrified. It was already stiff and mummified. So I grabbed it up, and that's about the sixth time that has happened, and I've gotten the little tiny lizards that live like all over in Florida. I've gotten a number of those, and it's just kind of crazy the way you'll get that symbolic meaning. The last couple of photo shoots that I've been working on, I have this really large, like an 8-inch crystal ball, and I was shooting images into that and asking for messages, and like about 10 of them came out with this Ouroboros wrapped around the inside of the sphere. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And then about a day later, I found the garter snake symbol Ouroboros, and then about 2 days later, you sent me an email and went, "Hey, what do you think about talking about the Ouroboros?" I'm like, wow, what a trippy little group of synchronicities that was. So I'm kind of
so much for eating one's own tail, right?
I've eaten my tail more times than I would like to think. I'm always eating my tail, man. That's like, oh my God, yes. It's interesting that, like in Greek mythology, it also represented the Milky Way, which is the symbol surrounding the heavens, not just in Earth. Yeah. Let's see. Let me check my notes here. Yeah. It's really super attached to Mercury and the idea of top. And
well, that's what I was already opened up, of course, synchronistically. So just again to give the baseline definition, of course, this is called Caduceus, and here it says herald's wand or staff. It's a staff carried by Hermes in Greek mythology, and consequently by Hermes Trismegistus in so-called a Greco-Egyptian mythology. The same staff was also borne by heralds in general, for example by Iris, the messenger of Hera. It is a short staff entwined by two serpents, sometimes surmounted by wings. In Roman iconography, it was often depicted being carried in the left hand of Mercury, or Hermes, the messenger of the gods, guide of the dead, and protector of merchants, shepherds, gamblers, liars, and thieves.
Yeah. Well, you know Mercury, man. He's a trickster. Yeah, for sure.
It is the best, very close to Fool energy, just like Pluto in a sense, no? At least somehow related, right?
What, to Fool energy?
Yes.
A little bit, but the Fool's really naive, and Mercury's anything but. Yeah. I think it's related in that the Magus is waiting for the Fool to show up on his doorstep so he can twist him around a few times and send him on to the priestess. Yeah. Well, you know, the Oral Boris, I know a number of people that wear that symbol all the time, and I use my little talismans to do some astral spelunking. You know, when I'm going to look for answers, and it just amazed me. You know, I did a little thought form construct that I could see the other night of the Ouroboros, and made it spin. And not spin so that you could see the symbol going around and around, but spinning like that was the globe, and it made that just turn into a little sphere of energy, and so many, you know, the energy consuming energy mindset, man. If you really grok that in fullness, that explains so much of the physical universe and why things happen and where things happen, and structures that surround the earth that are like energy rivers, you know. And those rivers are like there are really big ones that relate to the planet themselves. And as a good visual metaphor, if you think about being out in space looking at Jupiter and seeing the bands of clouds going around Jupiter, that's a really good reflection of what's going on. Like okay, you know, let's use the pandemic thing. You know, there have been a number of pandemics over the last couple thousand years, well documented. And, you know, those kinds of things, natural disasters, things that happen to the world at large, are like these large energy rivers that circle the globe. And then around those rivers are other smaller rivers, tributaries, that are the energy that people generate in relation to those things. Like the energy that people are spewing out about the pandemic, you know, are now like populating the area around that natural disaster river, for lack of a better word. And it's interesting to see that, and being able to kind of see where those things are placed, and what's kind of coming down the river. It really helps to be able to maneuver that with skill. You know, I think there's also nefarious people in the world with that skill that also try to use those things for their own personal purposes. But I think that by and large, what we're experiencing right now are the eternal cycles of the earth itself, and those could certainly be represented by the Ouroboros. And I think as you go down the line of things, of different systems, both astrally and magically, but also physically? Do you see the exact replication of that mindset and that energy set happening everywhere you look? Is the Ouroboros something you've ever used yourself magically?
Well, I definitely enjoy the symbol in terms of cycles and astrological correspondences. I already spoke also here with Jim about the different correlations. It seems like it's really also stacking up. Like there was the stellium thing, and now there's like strong correspondences to Saturn, and like so it is certainly also.
Well, that Saturn-Pluto thing, I mean, this is like
Right.
the quintessential example of that. You know, when Saturn and Pluto conjunct, it's about destroying outmoded systems and replacing those with systems that work. But the destruction of that at the beginning is really profound. And you know, while that certainly has effect in each of our personal lives, you know, the main influence of those two planets in that position, especially in Capricorn, you know, that's about things on a global setting. And it's so funny. I've just shaken my head like 2 or 3 times. You know, when it was in conjunction, everybody was talking about it, but you know, people have a tendency to believe, well, that goes by really fast. But no, Pluto and Saturn are in this conjunction thing, have been now for a month or two. I can't remember exactly the date, but that's going
What
to
a
be
coincidence.
that's going to be going on for another month or two before that starts. And in the meantime, before it goes out, it's also being joined by Mars, which is a martial aspect, warlike kind of like aggression that's getting added to that is going to be really weird, you know, and that talks to, you know, if you're looking forward to the next couple of months, you know, I've already been seeing reports of people getting in fights in Walmart and, you know, fist fights over paper towels in the grocery store. People are already getting to that. When it gets into survival zone, like people get very primal, you know, they get very primal. And I think that's probably going to magnify a little bit with Mars's entrance into the fray. Any thoughts on that, Raphael?
Well, I would always be wary of these instances, which may quite often be, you know, over publicized. Definitely, I would say there will be some kind of a collective, you know, resonance with that. But even here, we have as you mentioned, very fundamental reordering of structure globally with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. However, even here, how this is experienced by each and every one, of course, can be very different. If it would see consciousness in some ways as a bell curve, then there will still be those, of course, that will take, let's say, a more base chakra type path and enter survival mode. And definitely many individuals right now, once again, maybe confronting that, maybe even have more time than usual because they're bound to stay at home. Most of the people globally at this point, as far as I understand, in so-called Western civilized countries or whatever, but also in Asia and so on. Not that they're not civilized, but you know, just how it's usually being spoken. And so people actually may have time to go inward, and maybe also with the Mars thing. And even here, I mean, the wording is so interesting to me. If we just take it symbolically, and whether it's the French president or whether it's the Austrian chancellor or even some others, they now all talk about an invisible enemy. Isn't that kind of interesting?
I haven't heard the invisible. Well, yes, I have actually. That's very interesting. That's very interesting indeed. Are you familiar with Carlos Castaneda by any chance? and the whole Don Juan series of books.
Well, I heard of his genius quite a few times, but I haven't read anything. As far as I understand, very transcendental spiritualist.
On the note that you just brought up, I dug out a quote day before yesterday that I would love to share with you about. First of all, he was Carlos and Don Juan, and that whole like mode of finding a teacher. I like latched onto when I was about 17 years old, and I must have reread that whole series of books like 10 or 12 times. It's a very influential chunk in my learning for sure. So anyway, I want to read this to you on the note that you just brought up. This is Don Juan talking to Carlos in one of their meetups, and when Don Juan was teaching him, and this is Don Juan talking. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we do not do so. I have been beating around this bush all this time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner. This was an energetic fact that sorcerers of ancient Mexico, they took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops. Therefore, their food is always available to them. No, Carlos replies. This is absurd, Don Juan. What you're saying is something monstrous. It simply cannot be true. For sorcerers, or for average men, or for anyone, why not? Don Juan asked calmly. Why not? Because it infuriates you? You haven't heard all the claims yet? I want to appeal to your analytical mind. Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man, the engineer, and the stupidities of his systems of beliefs, or his stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief, our ideas of good and evil, of social mores. They're the ones who have set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success and failure. Oh man, dude, they have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal. But how can they do this, Don Juan, Carlos asked, somehow angered and furthered by what Don Juan was saying. Do they whisper all that in our ears while they sleep? No, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic. They are infinitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient, meek, and weak, the predators engaged themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist, a horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. Do you hear me? The predators give us their mind, which becomes our mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. I know that even you have never suffered hunger. You have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food will be denied. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them. Oh God. And they ensure in this manner a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico were quite ill at ease with the idea when the predator made its appearance on Earth. They reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays, and then everything seems to disappear and we now have a sedated man. And dude, check it out, 5G, like everything about the world right now is about making everyone docile. What I'm saying is that what we have against us is not a single predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, is no longer magical. He's an average piece of meat. There are no more dreams for man but the dreams of an animal who is being raised to become a piece of meat, trite, conventional, and imbecilic. And dude, that's a really harsh statement, but that's absolutely true. And there are probably several levels of not just one, but innumerable ones, you know. And we really are being great. We really are food, dude. And what do you think? What do you think they enjoy eating the most? Joy? No. Fear, pain, anger, rage, all the base emotions are the ones they devour and eat the most. And dude, if you look at, you know, before the 5G thing came in, you know, there's a whole couple generations now that are born in and raised in the internet, cellular phone, connected all the time scenario. You're always in that microwave energy, always. And the mountain of clinical research that has been done about the effects of the 4G stuff, you know, it's like lower testosterone levels, lower inspiration and energies, and like this whole host of diseases. It affects genetic changes and distortions. And now the 5G thing is in there. It's even more pervasive. It covers more area. You know, I told you I did some of my own EMF research a while when I heard about the 5G thing at the very beginning, and when it was still 4G, I could drive around Miami, and in between where the cell towers were really connected fully, you could find little pockets of diminished influence where it wouldn't go down like 50%, but it would go down 20, 30%. So what one was 35%, just in being in a different location that was far away from the towers. But now that the 5G thing has kicked in, we just did a couple of weeks ago, we did another canvas like we did with the 4G, and now every single space that was kind of like an oasis, it's chock full. And the effects that 5G microwaves have on our physical body are profound. You know, hormone levels, thyroid conditions, system failures, you know, and that's just talking about the personal effects of that, you know, testosterone, you know, motivation, drive, ability to concentrate, ability to hold a goal, a long-term goal for more than a day or two, you know, and we're watching all of these effects happen. And what is that doing? It's making everybody weaker, you know. The whole like mode of our you know, societal scenarios right now is like everybody's offended about everything. Everybody's heard about this. Everybody needs therapy for something, you know. And it's like, you think back 100 years ago, people like carving life out of dirt and wild animals, you know, just to stay alive. I mean, those people had vitality that we don't possess today. I mean, it's gone. And it just, I look around and it's just like we're rapidly declawing ourselves and making it so that we're pretty much ineffectual in lots of ways, you know. And people have abandoned their magical abilities, their own innate half of their being they don't really give the same kind of energy to that they give to their physical being. So it's like the things that you could be doing to ensure your passage, you know, in a cool way. You know, they're being told those things are bad in some way, that those are not good, that's like hurting you, and it kind of it saddens me more than anything to see people denied their gift and to see the machine of what we're. You remember that movie, The Matrix? You know, and they took this concept and really just kind of like you know, visualize that for a movie script in a graspable kind of way. But the broader concept of what's going on with that is absolutely real. I think they tapped into something to get that concept to begin with. And this thing that I just read you, I read a long time ago, and every part of every fiber of me, every energy cell of me rejected it and would not believe that to be the case. And over the course of decades, as I've done my own exploration, the path has led back to that exact answer. And you know, so anyway, I didn't throw that out to be you know, a negative thing. I threw that out for awareness sake and just as a possibility to consider for your own investigation. You know, the thing about that is that you have ability to change that. That's not a sentence. The fact that I've discovered that protects me already. The fact that you're hearing that right now already protects you. If you find that in your own exploration you want to add some energy to your own belief to that affects you too, and your own belief and investigation unplugs those connections one by one until you are free and clear and you're up out of the goo. You know, the world is really kind of an amazing place, and it is not designed, I don't think, for your evolvement. It's designed to you know, you're part of the energy recycle. You're part of the Oral Boris of the world, you know, and that's the gift of free choice that each of us have. The beautiful gift of free choice, because you don't have to accept that as the reality. And there, you can choose to do things for yourself and those around you that changes that reality and lifts your energy up into the upper layers of goodness that are free of that enslavement. You know, it's like a lot of people say, you know, it's symbolized, that exact concept is symbolized in so many different ways, you know, like the Judeo-Christian image of the devil. You know, it's you've heard it referenced so many times. You know, the world is the devil's world. You know, well, that's true to a certain degree. Certainly, the lower levels of it are, you know, but there are so many levels available to us that, you know, it just requires your choice and your reach out to go for that. And your understanding, first of all, that it actually exists, and you're placing yourself in your own consciousness in that frequency often, all the time, eventually, you know. Anyway, I got off on a ramble there. Sorry about that.
Well, what I would like to contribute is what I initially was alluding to. So this is King James Version Bible, Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what the Bible says. So also very much confirming this. Of course, Matrix, I also just took a note on that. So once again, sync, surprise. Matrix trilogy, then there is Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, really symbolic, highly recommended from my side. And then I'd like to read one paragraph of one essay I wrote quite a few years ago. So here it says, the lock and key of hierarchy, the human mind. So kind of alluding to what you mentioned in terms of Castaneda, even though I haven't read it. So it says, or I wrote back then, given what we understand about Ashby's law, just for reference, this is Ashby's law of requisite variety. So given what we understand about Ashby's law, that a complex entity can only be completely controlled by another entity of equal or greater complexity, how can hierarchical organizations successfully control humans to such a great extent? Manly Palmer Hall, one of the greatest scholars of the occult living in the 20th century, elaborates, quote, to repress rebellion is to maintain the status quo, a condition which binds the mortal creature in a state of intellectual or physical slavery. But it is impossible to chain man merely by slaving his body. The mind also must be held, and to accomplish this, fear is the accepted weapon. The common man must fear life, fear death, fear God, fear the devil, and fear most the overlords, the keepers of his destiny. We have discussed, end quote, we have discussed different methods by which the public shall remain confused and ignorant to prevent such a revolution, not of superficial change, but of organizing principle. The transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau, incidentally talking about slavery, makes this keen observation, quote, it is hard to have a southern overseer. It is worse to have a northern one, but worst of all, when you are the slave driver yourself. See how he covers and sneaks, how vaguely all the day he fears, not being immortal nor divine, but the slave and prisoner of his own opinion of himself, a fame won by his own deeds. Public opinion is a weak tyrant compared with our own private opinion. What a man thinks of himself, that it is which determines, or rather indicates, his fate.
Yes.
So here we go.
Yes.
What do you think about music break?
I think that would be really great. Let me leave off with one last little point. The idea that we are food for something else is really a kind of horrendous thought. But if you divorce yourself and separate yourself into your objective analyzer, and again, to go back to as above, so below, why would we think that we're the top of the food chain? Life consumes life as far down as we can go, and I think that's a truth up as well, and just if you think about it in terms of, okay, that's probably right, then instead of being upset about it, I don't want anybody to be thinking it's like, oh no, I don't want to contribute to that in any way, shape, or form. My sole intent is to tell you that is not a possibility you're sentenced to. That's not a reality that you have to surrender to. That is not a truth that you have to believe. So if you just keep your faith in your own bright light burning in its truest form, then you can rise, and then pretty soon you're looking down on all of that instead of being swirled around in the muck, and that's a much happier place.
Yes, here we are once again, The Wizard of Oz, edition 10.
You are such a smart ass, man. That was great. I'd still have permagrin on, dude. You did another one on me. That's Awesome. Love those. You know, I liked that song when it first came out, but they so overplayed it that it kind of like got, oh man, I don't want to hear that anymore. But like all these new versions of it, that all these new mixes, just really super fun, super fun, super fun, super fun.
Well, the fun thing for me is that for quite some time I'm pretty much out of any top chart things. So sometimes the first contact I have with some songs that have really amazing lyrics or singers or beats, and I actually get alternative versions first, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then later I realize that there is actually a super popular original as well.
Yeah, well, you know, this version was cool. I think I dug the other mix that you did. That there's just something really magical about that mix that was just really cool. And yeah, it's fun to hear it have a new life because it's a good song. Really, it really is.
Thanks so much again for shedding skin and life eating life. I mean, the whole genre of hip hop is basically a whole sample fest, of recollection. What I would like to say maybe about the whole process and this idea of being food. I mean, in a sense, to a certain extent, it can make sense that up to a certain level of density, kindly mute yourself because your outside is louder than you are. Thank you. Funny frequency shifts. So in terms of being food, there is the idea, as far as I understand, that quote unquote lower density up to, I would say, higher fourth density entities, we would now be third to fourth density, are kind of requiring some idea of a consumption of other, maybe even biological or chemical substances. And then eventually it just gets higher and higher until it's only frequency or more pure energy. And then I would say, even thinking about it, there is a level where you are so close to quote unquote the throne of God or the light of creation that it warms you automatically and you would not need to consume anything anymore, at least very soon. And this may also happen to us right here on the planet, not anymore act in a predatory fashion. And who knows, maybe even the lions gonna change their diets, or who knows what can happen here. So I think it's also what is happening right now.
Yeah, but you're still going to eat plants. You're still going to eat. You're going to eat something that was alive. That's unavoidable.
For now.
If you eat.
Now. Oh yes, for now. I mean, there's some individuals, of course, experimenting with eating a lot less or even other forms of energy. And I'm pretty sure that soon, and maybe even with things like 5G, when we realize that, certain frequencies like 60 gigahertz apparently interact with oxygen, which of course is not so great if you want to stay oxygenated and healthy. But then maybe even these ideas and the, let's say, backlash that we may experience or just the studies we may observe may even help us to realize that, oh, maybe actually we have an electromagnetic field and even higher around our bodies called aura, and maybe that's something we can now actually scientifically prove, even if maybe we approached it from the wrong angle first in terms of creating a weapon system to more probably like distort the field. Now, of course, we also have technology. I'm thinking about the so-called scalar wave technology, Tesla-Lakhovsky multi-wave oscillator, and many other devices that also use frequency in a very positive and beneficial effect, at least to the extent that it can be known or that anecdotal or scientific evidence is available. So I'm also having a very positive outlook. Of course, OKiTALK is
there are some really good people that are in the middle of developing that technology and are very close to be able to actually detect and take measurements and read it and visualize it. And when that happens and people become aware that part of their body, like somebody that gets cancer, dude, that cancer did not begin in their actual physical body. That cancer began probably out in their second band, emotional band about something, and was there for a while before it made its way down into your physical, into the first band and into your physical. And then that's when it manifests in your actual body. But all of that stuff starts in your energy field first. And if you're aware of that and can see that and affect that, then you can clean all of that stuff up, or it never happens to begin with, you know? And that's something I'm really, really looking forward to, because there's been a great growth in awareness of, you know, things to do for our physical bodies, you know, exercise. Although I still live in the fattest country in the world, man. I look around and go, guys, don't you know this doesn't work? You know, but there is a large segment of people that are becoming very aware of how they view their body, that have shifted their focus of food from something that is a social interaction element, or some sort of a emotional reward, or some sort of reaction to some emotional thing. And they've moved that from that consciousness into the consciousness that food is the fuel for your body. And if you give it, it will ask you for what it needs. If you've like gotten all the freaking sugar out of your system, that's a addictive drug that's like constantly trying to sustain itself and have you get more, so that the you know, and it's asking for a Twinkie, you know, a box of Oreos, you know, while this quieter voice over here is saying, hey man, how about some Brussels sprouts? Yeah, man, pumpkin seeds, that would be really good, you know. And when you shift your focus from that being a reward or connected to some sort of emotional scenario, and move that to making your body run right, it changes the outlook drastically. It's way good.
And even just to point that out, what you have just described with energy fields and the manifestation also of unease going through these different layers, this may also again give quite a different view on so-called infection theories. Because if we would take that as a given, that these things are always starting on an energetic level first, then also transmission would have to be thought of in a different way.
Here's the process. Excuse me. You hear about, say, and I'm talking about a person that's a healthy person, not a person that's already at physical risk, okay? So you're a healthy person, you hear about this coronavirus thing, you like warp into a panic about it, you start envisioning yourself and your loved ones dying, and you know, you start panicking over money, and everybody around you is flipping out, and you buy into all of theirs as well. That lights up a place in your second band, in your emotional band. And the more you drive that panic and fear, it gels, it congeals, and the more you put in it, it has a solidity to it, until it finally becomes a little black kind of like gooky thing that's attached to the edges of your energy field. And then if you continue to feed that, like, you know, the way ganglia come out of a brain cell, it kind of looks like that, man. Little tendrils start coming out of it and flowing down through your second band, and you keep feeding it, you get more panicked and more panicked, and then those tendrils go through your first band and into your physical body, and that's like you've asked for it to show up, and you put it there, and you left it there, and you fed it. You know, so it's like, if people were aware of their energy body to the degree that they're becoming aware of their physical body, so much illness and negative goop would get alleviated from the world. And that's the God's honest truth. Luckily, there's a whole wave, probably won't be for another couple generations, but there's a whole wave of new people that are aware, that are practicing themselves and going out and spreading that information out to other people that are ready to get it. And I think in another generation or two, we're going to be seeing us acting in a much, we'll be looking back at ourselves like, we were in the early 18, like looking back at us now, like this is the early 1800s, like we look back on that and go, wow, they were really primitive, man.
According to official narrative, at least.
Oh, right, exactly.
And all I can say is that, we've been in the Kali Yuga supposedly, so, I'm patient enough for generations, but I also would not underestimate the acceleration happening, even through events such as what we are experiencing right now.
Well, you'll be back in a few generations to scope it out anyway, bro, so there you go.
Yeah, well, I'm rather planning on staying
back to the Ouroboros.
Yeah. I'm always joking around and saying like I'm more like planning on staying, if necessary, a few hundred years, and then take a long break on some like fifth density planet or something where it's more chill and in a sense less or more dense than here.
Yeah, just make sure you clean up as much as you can this lifetime so that transition is as swift and easy as possible.
Indeed, I'm at it. And what I would do now is just to conclude this from what I had read earlier, I would read one or two more paragraphs if you agree about the hierarchy, because I
Absolutely
very much believe that this
super important
process now is also about realigning ourselves. While it's an eternal circle and cycle, there are of course very different ways of structuring society. So it continues after the quote by Thoreau, which ends with, "What a man thinks of himself, that it is which determines or rather indicates his fate." And then I go on. "Could it be that the mechanism of control employed by the hierarchical principle is more ingenious than we would assume, yet infinitely more fragile once we dare to confront it with an inquiring mind? We have given away our responsibility of thinking, feeling, and acting for ourselves in exchange for the promise of protection from all our fears, a promise that is broken every day and which could never be held in the first place. We allowed the hierarchical principle to infiltrate our mind so that we willingly submit to any master put before us, who proclaims he may save us from our fears. But could it be that for the hierarchical principle to survive, it has to outsource the actual control mechanism to each human individually? Have we not developed a schizophrenic personality? Are we not our own slaves and our own slave drivers at the same time? It is said that, quote, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Who would drink out of a poisoned fountain that brings slow and painful death, however addictive the taste may be? It becomes time to realize that only we ourselves can overcome our fears, through dealing with them and facing first and foremost our own shadows, however uncomfortable that may be. The psychologist C.G. Jung must have spoken out of experience when he attested that, quote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to stop from facing their souls. Yet, facing ourselves...
Yes!
I'm just gonna finish this up. Yet facing our fears means... yet facing ourselves means facing our fears. And it may well be the only thing which can put a definite end to our bondage and free us to experience the endless possibilities of life, unencumbered by any who claim to hold the truth. Quote, I maintain that truth is a pathless land, says the philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti. To embark on a journey where we each have to walk alone and where all the beaten paths curl up in circles, takes the courage to forfeit the soothing yet empty promises of any and all which claim to be able to take away your fear and enable you a cozy life. It is a courage so great it must spring from a flaming desire to understand the meaning of existence itself. It is no small feat to admit to one's own ignorance and cowardice in order to humbly face the challenge which is a journey into one's soul, dealing with and accepting one's innermost fears. The fictitious Bene Gesserit order from Dune offers this litany. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. The abandonment of fear indeed seems to equal the state of freedom. As the Buddha is quoted saying, the whole secret of existence is to have no fear. Never fear what will become of you, depend on no one. Only the moment you reject all help are you freed. End quote. It is thus your individual choice whether you live to remain in a golden cage at the whim of the masters of your choice, or whether you withdraw your consent, reject all help, and experience the freedom of a life that you truly lead yourself. Your own mind is both lock and key indeed.
Oh, dude, I was doing the Snoopy dance around the room as you were reading that. That is exactly right. You know, I have a question for you. Do you feel like you can have true growth with no discomfort?
That's a great question, and I am very, very much a fan of the idea of saying that while humans are quite well trained to learn through fear and pain and suffering, we're equally capable and actually, I believe, well proven, more efficient at learning through joy and love. There is a German neurologist called Dr. Gerald Hüther, who's actually become quite famous in terms of education policies and so on in alternative circles. And so I would say I have experience with both. Some great catalytic experience certainly came out of quote unquote great momentary suffering, however conscious I was of it at that point or not. However, I also am very much a fan and also I would say experiencer of the idea that learning through joy is equally possible. However, for many of us, to some extent, it may have been a necessity also, again, given the collective we have chosen to incarnate in, and also in a sense, even if, and I'm very much for that, we may now shift to a world where each is as conscious as that negative beliefs and emotions are not thrown around in a sense superfluously anymore. However, then, even then, the memory in a sense of also knowing that there have been a different way in the past may even potentially serve us to a great extent and may even bring forth much more creativity. However, now maybe not anymore so much tied to the idea, oh, I'm suffering so much, I'm such a great artist because I pour my suffering into the art, but more like, oh, I remember a time when there was still much more negative belief systems in the air, and now I can be even more excited and joyous to be living in a time where that is less and less and eventually not at all anymore the case. And I know that I am capable of it. Therefore, I know that each and every one is at the very least equally capable of it. And if I can choose what world to shift to, then that's certainly one I choose. And not because suffering is so bad or whatever, or I have to run away from it, but simply because the excited, fun, and joyous learning world is what I prefer.
Well, I would agree and disagree with you. You know, I have experienced, you know, I'm in this light painting thing right now that is just like the most amazing artistic experience I've ever had. It gives me such bliss to do. It's like, oh my God. And the things I'm learning out of that are myriad, you know. But some of the most valuable truths that help me lead a happy life now were not obtained in a pleasant fashion. and even some of them. Okay, this is a perfect example. You brought up Carl Jung. One of the most profound things I've done on my path has been to do my own version of Carl Jung's Red Book. And for those of you that don't know about that book, he had kind of like taken a leave out of active practice for a while. And he, for 3 years, like went and did this magical journey into himself, specifically into his shadow. And the point being to go there and to learn from and accept and befriend that part of him, so that it was something that just didn't leak into his life anymore. And I thought that was a really valid. It was something I really wanted to do for myself. So mine didn't go for 3 years, but mine went for a solid 3 months. And during that time, man, if you, without fear, face your shadow, you see shit that's unpleasant, man. And you see shit that you would rather have forgotten and rather have, like, not acknowledged that you were even part of. And, like, that, and I'm not talking the surface stuff. I'm talking, like, down there in the sub basement, man, where you just don't normally go ever, don't want to go. If you stand there fearless and accept that, then you come back changed. And I came back changed. And everyone that I know that I've referred that to, that's taken that on themselves, says the same thing. It's like, wow, I'm different now. It's like, I can't really put my finger on it, but I'm like, really? And having that connection, so it's like you're a whole person now. I mean, to deny that your shadow exists is folly, I mean, because it's operating on deep levels way underneath your conscious level. And if you're not consciously connected and absorbed in that being part of your whole, then it sort of operates in really unwanted ways and provides many opportunities for unpleasant things that are totally outside of anything that you would want or consciously think of. So my point being that while that 3 months made me address some things about myself that I really didn't like, and acknowledging that, accepting that, processing that, and then moving forward now, like constructing the person I want to be instead of the person that I was, and leaving behind, it wasn't just my own actions, but it was also, I was raised a Roman Catholic kid. So I had lots of really weird Catholicism and weird Christian stuff that was from my childhood that was manifesting, and my early visualizations and constructs of, say, like the devil and all kinds of stuff. So those were all really things I totally didn't expect and were a surprise. And honestly, Jung was raised Christian as well. I think he was Catholic. I can't remember, but I know he had a Christian background. So when I read his version of the Red Book, there, he had a lot of, in his own journey, a lot of Judeo-Christian kind of like issues he like dealt with, and it was super interesting. And I thought, wow, if that happened for him, that that was such a part of my early youth that I bet if we're trying to really get back to the beginning, then, that we'll probably have to address that too, which was one of the reasons I was kind of called to him. But my point being that, the physical effects I've learned how to do, none of those were gained easily. That first effect, I was out every night, like for 3 weeks without success. Or without visual success that would have been.
Was it exciting?
Well, I was committed. There wasn't any going back. It was, if it had taken 3 years, I'd have been out there every fucking night until that rod moved, you know? But it wasn't comfortable. You know, it wasn't easy getting to that, but the reward on the other side of that, and that greatly. I mean, I had no idea how it would actually feel, but I had an idea how I thought it was going to feel. And that alone was enough to, like, fuck it, man, keep going, let's go. You know, and every time my skeptic would show up to say, nah, dude, what are you doing? This is impossible. Who do you think, what, that, you know, that whole litany, man, it was really easy for the rest of my crowd to go, shut up. Keep spinning, man. Okay, here we go. Another wave, you know, and then, but, you know, I think that, I don't think that you can do one or the other. I think if every learning experience you have is from some, like my artist, you know, I'll get on this wave of inspiration and bam, I'll like be on riding that thing for months until I just milk it out. And I'm repeating myself and I'm like, okay, I'm not happy about this anymore. And then I reach this like frustration level and like right at the very end of it, I'll be like, oh man, I hate everything I've ever done. It's dreck. It's like, oh, it's awful. And then like the next day I'll go, oh. And there's a new wave, man. I'm on the surfboard. I'm like in the tube again, you know? And
well, then just
that
briefly,
moment before it happens, not really comfortable, but I also know after experience that drives a certain kind of energy that digs into a new place in me, which is what I'm looking for. You know, I wish I had another way of getting to that place. And I certainly find inspiration and joys and other people's work I think's amazing, and you know that's certainly a fertile field for me as well. But it seems like I take those quantum leaps when I like hit that space and stay through it and stay through the fear of like, no, I'll never do anything good again. You know, it's like, oh, I'm so tired of hearing that voice. It's like, shut up back there, man. Just make something. Shut up and do something. Stop thinking. Anyway, I got off on a ramble. I think you have to have both.
Well, so what Bashar would always say in terms of belief systems and unconscious is that actually you don't go down, but you go up. Because beliefs exist upon a higher frequency than emotions, which in turn exist on a higher frequency than thoughts and actions. And what I would say then is your learning, of course, very much depends on your belief system in terms of how you believe you can learn effectively.
So true.
The other aspect which you mentioned, which I would say is a given, is that, of course, when you then do act upon your excitement, it is also a natural inbuilt process that any negative beliefs, the higher you go on your frequency, the more you're like shaking up your building, and negative beliefs float to the surface and then are, you know, available to be integrated and processed, just as with the quote unquote shadow work you mentioned, which is then the integration and then allows you to move forward as a more complete individual with awareness of both more positive and negative, but again, the free will choice as to how to transform the totality of that energy and specifically how to express it. And so I would say that's
true. That's true, because inside each one of us are infinite potentials. You know, there's a saint and there's a serial killer and a monster in every one of us. And we have potential for everything in between, you know, and it's our choice that determines what that potential manifests as, you know. So being aware of the full spectrum is really, really useful.
Exactly. So it's, you know, we're back at the fool in a sense. So the choice is, you know, again.
You know what I love about the fool? You know, it's like he's getting ready to trek out. He's like got his bags packed, and he knows, you know, when I was in college, we used to like get some money together, fill up the gas tank and just start driving. And we just do that for a week, and we knew it was going to be fun. We didn't know what was going to happen, but it was just the journey, and knowing that you're going to a fun destination, wherever the hell that is, or whatever it is. And that's kind of like his energy to me, he's kind of naive in a way. It's like, yeah, I'm setting off on this journey of self evolvement, self-exploration, and quest for knowledge, but he doesn't have a clue what he's going to learn. And there's just this naive, like, everything's going to work out good, man. It's going to be really good. That's a really positive card for me. It's like, because there's like not doubt in him, there's like this degree of faith that just no matter what, it's going to be cool. It's going to work out, and I love that about that card so much. And that really does reflect what you were saying.
Yeah. And even here, the Fool, in my impression, makes a self-empowered choice to enter into whatever world he chooses to enter. And in terms of snake symbolism, the vision I got during my first ayahuasca journey also was very much connected with snakes. I'm also in Chinese astrology. I'm an earth snake. And then kind of seeing this idea, like, me like kind of moving like a snake a little bit, and like visualizing and like trying different like clockwise movement, counterclockwise, and so on, and just meditating on the idea of the snake. And what I got then was like, because of course these states are quite intense on ayahuasca, and then I was like, well, the snake just moves left and right. It's just like kind of, don't even know how you call it if a snake is moving. It's slithering through reality, and it doesn't matter if it appears positive or negative, good or bad. The snake is just going through in the middle, kind of like on the Taoism symbol, or the yin yang symbol rather. You have the S in the middle, which is the snake. And
right, it's a line. Care. It's the infinitely small line right in between the black and the white.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the neutral point, right? The choice once again.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to share on these ideas, or you'd like some more music? What's your preference?
I think we coded that one pretty good. I'm excited about that. I would love to, this is not I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this so I say it exactly the way I mean it. I would love, the things I've been afraid of the most. That's a Nine of Swords. That's why I hate that Nine of Swords, man, because it's my air Aquarian at its nastiest, because it's sitting there using my artist to come up with all the ways this is going to suck, whatever it is I'm thinking about. This is going to be, oh man, this could happen, man. Dude, I'm very creative. I can create, man, some scenarios that are painful and like, wow. And like every single time, if you just stay with it and stay cool, at the other side of it, I always walk away going, wow, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And if you can start like moving into that space where it makes you fearless, and where maybe if something is uncomfortable for a moment or two, that that shortly that discomfort is going to lead to a further bloom of goodness and joy that will last for a long time.
Right. And even here, when you know the tarot and you've experienced these things for yourself, then you already know how the journey is going to look like. And then, your experience even of the, let's say, mechanistically negative energies of contraction, which may happen at times, even if we're spiraling up, there is some oscillation. However, if we're aware of the process, we don't need to needlessly suffer or identify, but can take a bird's eye view and understand what's happening, and then even deliberately choose to be positive or laugh if we want or cry, but not be in despair or anything like that, because once you've seen the road, you've seen the road. Once you've learned to play the game, it's always the same game. It's always different, but it's always the same.
This is a perspective on that. Uncomfortable does not necessarily mean unhappy. Like when I was out there pushing that rod and not getting any success, I was uncomfortable, but I was joyous in that I was fulfilling a gift I wanted to give myself for a long time. And so while there was discomfort, there was also great joy in knowing what that would lead to. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, exactly. That's how it goes. And even here, what comes to mind, of course, is the idea of, we could now say your ancestor spirits, or what I would say now is your own future self, already existing on a parallel Earth reality, already being able to, in this case, for example, do these specific effects, and then just calling out to you and being like, look, I am one quite probable reality. How do you think about moving that way? And and then again, you made the choice, and that's what you got. So
I have a question for you. We're talking about the Fool. One of my favorite things about the tarot, just in general, has been taking the Fool's journey, and that's. Have you done that? Have you done that yet, Raphael? Like the whole thing, like where the Fool starts, he starts off on his journey, just like we were talking about. First person he meets is the Magus, and he gets his occult skills and learns about his mastery of the elements. And then he meets the Priestess, and he gets the secrets of the tarot and looking behind the veil, and on and on. Each one of those cards is a real specific lesson for the Fool. And at the end of it, it's the universe, and okay, now you have all the tools. Start off on your life's journey with all the marbles. I love that. I've done it so many times now.
Well, it's an interesting concept to say that now you can start on your journey. I mean, it's also true. The universe is also a beginning card, but
it's the Oral Boris again, because you finish the universe, and you're the Fool again, back at a new thing.
Exactly.
That now you have a whole pack of stuff in that stick with the bag on it. Now you have a whole pack of stuff you didn't have the first time. So let's do it again then, man. Because there's infinite. It's not like you're ever gonna get it. It's like there's infinite layers to that journey, man. And you go through it, and you finish at the end of the universe, and you have all of this host of new learning. Now you go back to the beginning and start all over again, and then you have this host of new learning again. It's like it never ends. It's the Oral Boris in truth.
Yeah, it's almost like the small package that the Fool brings with him is the universe from his previous journey,
That's his universe.
Exactly, but it's like the journey that he undertook before, like the universe he visited last. He's putting it in his backpack.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
And taking it with him. And even here, what Bashar always likes to mention, and I love to repeat because I just very much resonate with it. He always says that what we'll come to realize is that, and this also very much goes into the idea of the golden rule and unconditional love and absolute self-acceptance and integration. So he says that you do not exist within a reality, but you are the entirety of the reality that you believe you are merely existing in. So, and then seen from that perspective, truly the Fool as an individuated entity, let's use humans as example just because it's the most relatable, would then incarnate, go through all of these processes, of course fractally in a small sense, in the grand sense, but from a human perspective at this time, the grandest sense would be truly the self-recognition as the entirety of the universe that entity or we as humans may be able to perceive. So to truly realize that we are not just individuals, but we really are the entirety of the projection we can perceive. That is our true complete body. And when that realization occurs, that is the true shift to fourth density. And then of course a whole other game starts as well. and we can enjoy the shifting and journey
Yes,
that's happening now
that's so
in that
true.
direction. Because even here, all the whole ideas, such basic ideas like taking care of your environment and so on. Even apparently in 94, actual UFOs landed in Zimbabwe, and I spoke with one of the guys who was a child back then, and he said that many of the children there received a message, and the message was like super simple, almost banal. And apparently these were like gray type entities conveying the message. They actually left their craft, and lots of children saw it. A psychologist was there, and soon there will be a movie released called The Phenomenon, where this is documented. But anyhow, the main message which they gave,
I saw a trailer for that. Yeah, looks
right,
pretty cool.
So the main message they gave was really simple. It was simply something along the lines of take care of your environment. And seen again from that higher perspective, it simply means start realizing that you are the environment yourself. Start taking care of yourself. Rebalance, reintegrate yourself.
Yes.
So yeah, at least of course from my perspective, it all kind of makes sense. But yeah.
You know, each one of us are complete universes in and of ourselves, with this whole expansive experience, and where we relate to other energies that, like an energy people relate to as God. Every single person is going to connect to that differently, and I think that we are in a space and time right now where everybody's looking to gather by types of things they do, and those become kind of little cages of likes or groups of people that have similar interests, to the exclusion of other points of view. And I think that's really kind of a very dangerous path to go down to. And I think as we realize that it is not our group consciousness that actually makes change, where all that starts is
right
inside of you and your own personal universe, and expending energy inward to apply all those changes that you think other people should be doing to yourself first, And it's funny when, people don't relate to being told what to do, man. Somebody wags their finger at me and says, I have to do this, and I have to do exactly the opposite. I think it's just genetic. I can't help it. But, if I look at somebody that's doing something that I go, wow, that works, man. What is up with that? And you start looking at that person not from what they're telling you to do, but how they actuate it in their lives. It's like, that's when I get really like profoundly influenced to change direct or give a course correction, and those are easier modes. But that person started from inside and made their universe something that was like exuding energy that was amazing, and frequencies that worked and were in harmony rather than this discordant white noise. Anyway, that's we had quite a ramble today.
Well, it's the Ouroboros. And of course, in terms of...
That is perfect. It really is. That is perfect. It is. We've come around again to the same place after the end of every weird little tangent we went off on. Awesome. Perfect.
And even here, talking about learning, of course, acting on your excitement, leading by example, being the best possible version. Elan would say the referential, preferential you. Tessarian would say imperial self. Bashar may say higher self. Someone else may say Algoides, card number 20, I believe. However one puts this, but this is always something that we can orient towards simply by being open to the possibility itself. And yeah, the expansion of consciousness always is a process of integration. And I would say, especially at a time like this, it is good to remember that only because one becomes aware of something negative doesn't mean one has to choose something negative for oneself.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
all energy
Exactly.
can always be transmuted, and it's usually quite effective.
I have a weird little saying. You know, I've been an advertising guy my whole life, so I'm always writing taglines. But this really is exactly the process for right now. Be aware, be prepared, and don't be scared. You know, it's like open your eyes without fear, look at what's coming. You know, see where's the hurricane going to hit. You know, and be prepared. Do what you can, both on your physical thing, get your environment cool, and that's always a good mode to live in, whether there's a pandemic or not. Because the world's crazy, man. You just never know. You know, expect nothing and be prepared for anything. You know, and by and large, absolutely, don't be scared, man. Just have your grip together, and know we'll be good. Know we'll be good.
Most certainly. And just as you mentioned, also in terms of learning or inspiring others, this is what has been shared by many as well. And this may also relate to the whole question we had earlier about learning through joy or suffering. So one doesn't need to learn through discipline in terms of you don't do that right or this right. And even here, if we understand how many different perspectives there, you know, good advice or good inspiration may be different for each and every one. However, that if one finds some effective ways, just as you mentioned, usually the individuals resonating with that are attracted to it, and then they just automatically love to, in a sense, copy those frequencies or gain that transference and implement it for themselves in their own way, not because they've been told to change, but just because they've seen examples of someone who's happy.
And then that multiplies, and that multiplies, and that multiplies, and what started small, it's like an energy pandemic.
Exactly. So we can rise to meet any and all challenges, and eventually, you know, I would say rise above any and all, you know, unnecessary suffering.
Isn't that kind of the fun of it, though? I mean, rising to the challenge is kind of kick. I mean, I don't,
for sure,
right?
But it's just like you mentioned. The question is then whether I have to include it with a whole lot of fear and anger and angst and so on, or whether by now I'm familiar with the idea that it's just how it's done. So even in the terms of rising to the challenge, it's a fun and exciting process. And I think that's all it is about. It's not about creating a perfect homeostasis or something, but just becoming more and more aware of the processes and the cycles and one's own preferences and methods and what works for oneself, and then have a different approach. And then any situation does not need to be desperate anymore, but can be at the very least hopeful, if not even imbued with a joyous knowing that all is well, especially if we understand ourselves truly to always also exist on higher planes, and this truly really just being the craziest excursion incarnation cycles that many of us could have imagined. And so now we call ourselves humans.
It is nutty. It is just a crazy time, man. I've seen a long time, or a relatively long time in human terms, and this is really this is unique.
Yes. We are, I would say, very blessed to be living in this particular now as well. And as always, if we respond from love, what we will beget is more love and more acceptance. And I'd say that's one way to go.
So I have, in the midst of all of this, been like I've been super intense with light painting lately. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's photography, but it's also actually like painting, but you're painting with different tools that emit light. So you're actually painting with light. And I've always loved moving paint around, the oils and watercolors all my life. And my photography, amazingly joyous for me. And to have this perfect combo of photography and the things that you can achieve with that, and being able to actually move light around. It's like 3:00 in the morning. It's a dark garden, man, and I'm like waving these light wands. It's really crazy. But what comes out on the other side is just been blowing
Crazy.
my mind. Yeah, it's blowing my mind. It's like on this whole different like level for me, and it's delicious. So I've gotten so inspired that I've got a new tarot deck in the works using light painting technique, man. I've already got like about 5 cards done. I think you'll really dig it. I can't wait to start sending you some stuff. It's been really inspiring. And I keep looking for new tools. I'm like the DIY light painting tool guy. It's like there's stuff you can buy online. It's like $150, $200. Just, man, I went to Home Depot and got a clear tube that is used to protect fluorescent tubes, and sanded it up and slapped some color in there. It's amazing. It's just been like when something is really your passion, it's like do every single part that you do about it, like finding the props and like it's discovering something new that night, and what's the inspiration for tonight? Let's not repeat ourselves. Let's do something cool. And like just getting into this new virgin territory of experience and artistic expression is just like, wow, it's so addictive. I can't even begin to tell you.
So much for being a fool in a new world, right?
That's magic. I absolutely believe that's an effect. That's a magical effect. I think every act of magic is an act of creativity, and every act of creativity is an act of magic.
Everything is magic.
Yes, to a degree.
Well, of course, depends on your frequency. What you put out is what you get back, but it's still change, it's still magic.
Yeah. Some magic you like more than others.
Exactly, that's where preference comes in.
Yeah, right. All right, well, I guess that's about me for today. It looks like it's about that time, huh?
Yes, it's as you like, but I think it's a good time to wrap it up, unless there's anything that's left that you would have liked to mention in terms of the whole, Caduceus, Ouroboros. Of course, this is an infinite topic. Even the symbol itself stands for infinity, so...
Well, I just keep amazing over and over and over how this entire show about the Ouroboros was an absolute example of the Ouroboros. And it came back around every single time, no matter where we went. And it's just like, wow, there you go. The universe is amazing when you plug into the zone and let it work miracles in the midst of whatever you're doing. It always keeps me interested, which for an Aquarian, hard to be. Yeah.
Yes. Let's have a world and a life, on a wonderful playground. Holiday planet, not prison planet. Again, everyone can choose for themselves. However, as mentioned, lock and key.
Well, the devil card, right? I'm talking about the card in the Rider-Waite deck. The devil's sitting up on his throne, and he's holding 2 chains, and there's a male and a female slave down on the floor, and they're chained at the neck with this big metal collar. And you're going, oh, poor slaves, man, they're enslaved by the devil. But the only thing the collars are huge, and the only thing they have to do is decide to take the collar off and go away. and they're no longer slaves. And that's exactly the way it is. You know, you're only, the only reason for bringing any of that up was the awareness burst. You know, it's the jail key. It's awesome. And wanting something different for yourself and everyone else is the jail key. So just focus on the goodness of it, you know, because if you think about focusing on the badness of it, it can get a little overwhelming.
Thank you, Bryan. I'd say this was Oral Boris edition number 10. Very integrative. And yeah, thank you so much. And talk to you next time.
Hey, I'll just put in a little bit of a plug before we go. Anybody interested in scoping out the work or tarot decks or anything, it's wizardofodd.com, and that's wizard with a Y. So please check me out. I've had a number of people stop by, and I love talking about stuff, and give me a holler.
Always a good idea. So thank you once again. Already looking forward to show 11, which shall at the very least be equally interesting. And yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do it 11-11.
Right. I'm sure we'll find the perfect synchronization. So then it is only the eternal now. Still, I like to say, catch you all next time. Thank you so much. And
Goodbye,
thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bryan.
Radio OKiTALK, Radio OKiTALK, Radio OKiTALK.